It's not too often that a movie that is delayed in its release by a year was the perfect timing for its premiere on the big screen. Now, this movie we're going to be talking about today is probably the first BritCrime film noir of the 1980s, even though it was finished in 1979. And we're going to be talking about the underrated classic, The Long Good Friday. Now, Long Good Friday made the up and coming star of the great Bob Hoskins, who later went on to Brazil and Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Mona Lisa fame. And the great Helen Mirren, who at the time was sort of like a very highly regarded British character actress before she became much bigger in the U.S. and worldwide with her television and movie work. So both Hoskins and Mirren were about 7 or 8 years behind their full recognition of her talent. And boys, this movie is tremendous. Now, to many movie critics, it's considered a top 20 British movie of all time, and some reviewers in England and actually North America, Sisler and Ebert, have declared this as probably more of a top five or top 10. It's a very simple plot, but the way it's brought about, it combines elements of suspense, film noir, action, intrigue, psychology, uh, religion, gangsterism, homosexuality, double cross, triple cross. So there's a lot going on. So I'm not going to give away the whole plot because that's not what my podcasts are about. Is to encourage people to watch it. Now, the storyline starts off very interesting because the music of the soundtrack is used as a background for several key scenes that determine the plot that you're going to see. Now, in the first moments, I don't think there's a line besides bar talk or talk like old talk at the bar. In the first 10 minutes, there's several scenes going on where there's a delivery of money, a double cross of the delivery. Seems to be like Ireland or IRA location. They're saying it's Belfast, but I think it's undetermined. We have a scene where this very tricky guy is trying to pick up a young man that seems to be an Irish gay bar, and we find out later on the reason why. We see the capture of the gay gentleman that this seems to be a gangster that's trying to kill some time before his next movement. The person who's trying to pick up gets kidnapped, and eventually him and another henchman are knocked off. And it ends up where information comes back that two or three members of a mafia collective or syndicate run by the Bob Hoskins character is has put all this into motion. Now, Errol Shand is the main character, again played by Hoskins, and Shand is best described as a low end kind of Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Mantegna style character. He's quite egotistical, not because he's a mafia guy. He believes that he could be part of a large scheme to rebuild a part of London that he feels will bring Britain in the heavier aspect of the common market. Now, Shane, who seems to be what he call a long-term British hood, is aspiring to become a legitimate businessman through the aid of a partnership with an undetermined representative of the American mafia. Seems more Chicago or New York, but the accents of the American mafia people are not really distinct. And part of it is Shannon wants to redevelop the London docklands. And his mafia mole or right hand man is the beautiful Helen Mirren, who provides a stabilization to Shannon's efforts. They're hosting a dinner party to expand on what he's planning by inviting the mafia reps to hear his plan. She speaks French to the cook. She's kind of a welcoming part, good cop, bad cop to her husband. It's very effective because we often see mafia females or wives or muses of the mafia people being weak. In this case, she's loves her husband. She's strong. It just happens to be he's a cruel member of the mafia. Now, Earl's world is very, very specific. He believes in the expansion of Britain, the British common, the economic market that Britain is part of, sort of like with the current situation where now England is left. Back then, Britain wanted to be a part of the European common market in a big way. I think these came in the mid 70s, and because of the kind of ongoing recession of the late 70s, Sand his efforts is going to help rebuild not only his pride in England, that the pride of people across Britain should have for London. He was trying to, in the famous speech at the first, where he's having a party in the boat, which kind of gets the plot really, really ramped up. He's trying to convince everybody, listen, we can make this the capital of Europe. There's, crazy potential, money to be made, billions. He's not only trying to convince himself, but convince people there and the mafia members. And one of the mafia members, in kind of the key scenes, basically, don't go too fast. There's a pace of things like we do it in the States. But here's what happens. His right hand guy, Colin, who went to Belfast to deliver the money, seems to calm down the IRA. And he got triple crossed. A young Pierce Brosnan, who plays kind of a hitman for the IRA, tracks down Colin when he comes back to, I don't know, the baths, like a gay, swimming in bath area, and comes onto him and lures him in and murders Colin in a very, very um, dramatic murder scene, which kind of establishes the fact we don't know what's going to happen. Very soon later, people are getting ready to go to church for the long Good Friday weekend or the Easter weekend. A bunch of IRA style bombs have been going off. People are getting blown up. There's bombs at churches. And Harold is basically saying, what the hell is going on here? My whole world is ready to go and this stuff is coming in. Coming to that. At the first, he doesn't take it seriously, but as the movie goes on, he knows this is pretty well out of his control. Now, finally finds out that it is the IRA's London leadership that is causing these troubles, as you like to say, in England. And he offers them money for a ceasefire, but it's very specific to the fact that the Euroshan character is overconfident, causing his whole situation to go out of control. See, the biggest thing about any mafia, you only control for so many years. Either you get too weak or you get too old, and people coming up want to knock you off. And there's a very famous scene where he's trying to garner information. He's kidnapped some of his enemies or the people that don't follow his leadership, hangs them upside down while they're still alive, trying to get specific information. And that's one of the main scenes that stand out in 1980s Brit cinema. The fact is, someone as nice in real life as Bob Hoskins is so evil in the movies that he has to basically use what's like 1930 American mafia style torture to get information out. Now, what's very interesting with this, there was a lot of background trouble behind the scenes about the release of the movie. ITC originally did it, produced it, Lou Graves Group. They were going to release it, but he wanted Hoskins' voice to be dubbed, similar to how Mad Max, the voices Mad Max and Green Mel Gibson were dubbed for international distribution. But eventually, Handmade Films, run by George Harrison, bought the movie as is, even though we didn't like the content, and released it, and that was a great decision. Now, on a personal level, I don't remember Long Good Friday being released in my part of Canada in the early 80s. And I know it was on Laserdisc, but I don't think it was on VHS until well, maybe after Bob Hoskins became big. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Mona Lisa, Brazil. And it's sometimes forgotten because the title of the movie really is the non-Brit crime fan, what do you call it, confusion. The long Good Friday, a lot of people in the States don't know what Good Friday is. I know it's kind of bizarre, but they call it Easter weekend in the States. In Commonwealth countries, we know what Good Friday is because it's a time of reflection, time of celebration of the resurrection of Christ. But for the U.S. Market, there were talk about name changes. There were talk about um, refilming some scenes. There was also talk about doing it with a remake with an all-American cast. But it's a flawed movie because visually and script-wise, it's not really as tight as it should be. But that's the draw. You know what you're going to get, but you don't know about it until the end. And the ending of the movie is a classic in British cinema because I don't think most people would see it coming. It's almost an end to like a horror movie. It's a very chilling last scenes, and our good future superstar James Bond, Pierce Brosnan, is the start and the final person or the catalyst for the big scene at the end. That everything kind of not say revolves around him, but to see a very handsome man like Pierce Brosnan using his looks to lure in men, not women. The homosexual overtones. Is he really a homosexual in the movie, or is he just playing gay to promote his thoughts and his colleagues' thoughts about IRA and the independence and all that? It's psychological and it's spiritual and it's sexual on a lot of levels. And Helen Mirren is a very, very beautiful and sexy woman in this movie, but she's not manipulated like nude scenes and stuff like that, even though there is some nudity in the movie. But spoiler alert, if you don't like these type of movies, it's hard on the head because you can start thinking about what the early 1980s was in Britain, especially of Commonwealth descent. There's a lot of things, thoughts of poverty and how England was pretty well just being destroyed from the inside because of economic and immigration and social factors. Parts of England weren't a great country in the late 70s, early 80s. A lot of racism, a lot of job loss, a lot of big problems. So Harold Shand is not portrayed as a hero. He's portrayed as just an individual who is so egotistical. He thinks the world should give him a long Good Friday. In this case, he gets exactly opposite what he expected. Did his character deserve what happened to him in the movie? Hard to tell. I'll leave that for the critics and the fans. So again, 4.5 stars out of five. I don't think this movie is 5 stars out of five. Again, the cinematography. Some of the actors in the movie are kind of flat, but that's okay. They do the role. It's sort of like the movie that the the British Cool movie, the TV movie a few years ago, when we were talking about a kind of a NDP style candidate who rose to power, and they were trying to stop him, like his socialist means and stuff like that. Some of the actors and actresses in that movie weren't the best, but they played their role for the 2 to 10 minutes they're on the screen. It's the same style. British cinema of the late 70s, early 80s was very minimalistic, and it was very it wasn't high def. It was like but the cinematography didn't play. Usually had one or two big actors at the top who carried everything. And in this case, you might as well say Bob Hoskins should have been nominated for an Oscar, a BAFTA, a Golden Globe for this. But maybe it was just too close to home for the critics. It basically shows that England is just as corrupt as America, and the IRA and the American Mafia and the London Mafia were no different. So on this COVID Friday, wish you a long Good Friday, and see any of your enemies or friends hanging upside down. Don't hang around because usually bad things happen where people are hung from their stirrups, still alive, and the persons are looking for information. Have a good day. Bye.